The next thing that we're going to be tackling is lighting of this Gothic archway. And because we are doing this graveyard theme, we're going to play it, really moody. We're going to do it moonlit with some light sources in different areas and make it really dramatic. But what we're looking at on the screen right now of this Gothic archway is not dramatic at all. It's very ambiently lit, overcast, day lit, which is not going to work for what we want. So we're going to need to light this so that it represents this kind of dark, moonlit feel, kind of moody feel to it. So normally at this point, when I'm working on a shot, I won't start lighting an asset like this. It's a little bit out of context because the way that you want to work, or typically want to work, is that you start out with a sky first. And that sky will inform what your land in your foreground is supposed to look like. Because you can look at the sky and there's information in there about like the lighting direction, the color of the light, the color of the shadows, the way the shadows are playing across different objects. And so there's a lot of information in the sky. And so once you figure out your sky, then you can build your land projections or your foreground projections, and you make those feel like they belong underneath that sky. And then after you've done that, you would take something like this archway, and then you would integrate that into what you already have. But the reason that I'm doing this first is to kind of highlight that this process of lighting this Gothic archway is non-destructive. And so even though we put work into it right now, and it's kind of out of order, that what we build to light this archway can be changed very quickly. The lighting direction can change, the color of the light can change, and all of that. And it makes it, doing this in a non-destructive way makes it so that you don't have throwaway work. And I've mentioned before that if the camera changes or something like that, and we're seeing more of this archway from one angle or the next, and we don't have projection coverage from that side, then we just go back to our Mari file and start filling out those projections, and then we have everything we need, and it hasn't destroyed our work that we've already done. So that's what I mean when I say non-destructive. So first off, let me just show you a way that you could light this archway within Nuke. And then I'll tell you about some of the limitations that you're going to get if you light it within Nuke. So let's go over here, and I'm going to explain this little node system that I've created. There's 3 different lights that I have in our scene. So let's just go ahead and look at this in 3D view here. Double click on the scene and it'll build this out. So I have this directional light here, which is going to be our moonlight, and then I have a couple of lights in the center here that have different fall-offs. And I'm going to have a lighting source right in the center of this thing. And it's going to be really interesting to see all the shadows kind of play off of this intricate architecture. So so these are actual lights within Nuke, and these can be accessed within your 3D menu. And I have 2 point lights and a directional light. And each of these lights, so if we take a look at these lights, this light right here only has it has a value of 1 in the red channel, and then green and blue are 0. So this light is 100% red. And this light here, if we click on this, it has a value of 1 in green and 0 in the others. So it's going to be 100% green. And then this is 100% blue. And these are all being cast onto a white. So if we were just to disable those, you can see that I just have a white patch right here that's feeding into this this Gothic archway, and it's applying this white color to the whole of the object. So let's go ahead and turn these back on and take a look at the render. So now we have an exact copy of our Gothic archway, but it's all kind of crazily lit. So let's go ahead and look at the channels R, G, and B. So you can see that because these lights are like this light right here, we're looking at the red channel. This light right here is 100% red. It doesn't have any green or any blue in it. So if I disable that, you can see I'm looking in the red channel and there's nothing there. So turn it on, turn it off. So, and same goes with green or blue. Let's take a look at blue. This is our moonlight that's directional. So you go here and you disable that, and there's nothing within the blue channel. So this is, I often use lights that are colored red, green, and blue so that they're really easy to use as masks for color correction. So that's what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be using these as a way to color correct. So let's take a look at that here. So the way that you would do that is that you would do a shuffle. Right there. And if you take a look at this, we have RGB channels and our alpha channel. So we're going to want to use this shuffle or this node path as a mask. So the first thing that we're going to do is the red channel. So let's take a look at the red. So we're going to want to turn this in and put this red channel into our alpha channel. So if we look at our alpha channel, right now it's completely white here. So if we move this X from the alpha channel into the red channel, it's now taking the red channel and feeding it into our alpha channel. So then if we do a grade node here, we can take this little noodle here, and if you pull it out, it says mask, and connect it into there. So now this grade node will only change the color of the inside of this archway. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So if we wanted to multiply up here, so you can see that it's doing that there. But what we're going to want to do first is we're going to want to grade this down. So let's go to multiply and bring the value down like this. So it's a little more night lit. And then let's go ahead and bump this up. And we'll actually heighten the value here. So look, there you go. So what we're getting here is that we're getting the center light that's lighting the center of our projected archway. So this archway, you can see up here, it's all projected. And within Nuke, you're actually relighting a projected map painting inside it. And so It's quite cool to be able to have that functionality. So let's go ahead and shuffle. Do another shuffle. This time we are going to move the alpha into the blue channel. And let's do another grade. And this is going to be our moonlight. So let's go to multiply here and increase the value on this guy quite a bit. And then let's look from this side. That's too much. So now what we have, so you can see the before and after. Let's make this large so you can see it. So this is what we started out with. And what this represents and is really good for is, especially if you're taking photos on an overcast day, is this represents a global illumination pass. So if you modeled, let's say you built this thing from scratch and you textured it all from scratch. You didn't use any of the photos of the original, and you were to do a render of the global illumination pass, this is most likely what it would look like, because there's no directional light to it. So if we just treat this as a global illumination pass, then we can actually add our lights on top, right? So this is darkening it down so that it's our night, and then this is adding the light in the center, and then this is adding our moonlight on top. So, but there is a problem with the Nuke lights, and I'm sure that it will be fixed. Not fixed, but the features built out more. Not that it's broken, but it's just not there quite yet. So if you click on this light right here and you go to shadows, I have a little point light in there, and right here at the bottom it says casting shadows from a point light type is not currently supported in the scanline render node. So this is our scanline render node. That's what we're rendering everything from, and shadows are not supported with the point lights. So we have a major limitation there. You see that the light is here, and there should be a big dark shadow right there. Let me just take a look at just this. So you can see that the light is hitting these front faces, but it's also hitting this back here, and it's hitting all this right here, where there should be a big shadow right there, and there should be a big shadow underneath. And so I show you this because I want this training video to be as timeless as possible. So in future versions, and as of Nuke version 8, it does not have the ability to cast shadows. So in future versions of Nuke, I wanted to show you this so that you can do all of your lighting within Nuke, and it is a really viable solution for relighting stuff, especially projected matte painting pieces you can have lit within Nuke, which is really fantastic, and your compositor will love you if you can build in this kind of functionality for them to work with if you deliver them kind of a live matte painting. So this is not actually our solution for lighting our archway, but we're going to do something very similar. So let's go ahead and we're gonna trash these, and let's go into Maya. All right, now that we're in Maya, we are going to do our lighting set up in Maya and then transfer that information into Nuke. So the way that we are going to do that is that we are going to modify this model of our Gothic arch just a little bit. So if we select everything and combine it into one group, so that we can do a UV automatic map and put everything on one UV square, as where before we were setting it up between multiple UVs. This we're going to be setting up on just one UV for our lighting. So it's UV mapped now, and just the default is perfectly fine for what we need. And just to show you what that looks like here. And it's all really pretty small on there, but that's okay. All we're going to be dealing with is gradations of light, and this is going to be sufficient for what we need. All right, so let's go ahead and light our model. So let's go up here and go to Create, Lights, Point Light. So let's bring it to the center here and move it up. Okay, and let's go ahead and make this guy green. So now it is 100% green, and it has no other colors in it, and that'll be great for our channels. And then for the decay rate, our light source is going to be in the center here, so we're going to want it to be intense light. I mean, it's not a huge light, so we want it to be intense right here and then fall off rather quickly. We don't want to illuminate this whole space. We want to just do a small one. So let's go ahead and set the decay rate of the light to cubic. So these are different decay rates. Cubic is the most severe fall off. So we can get a really tight light within here, and it falls off really quickly, and it doesn't like go all the way out to the edges here. So, but in doing that, I really have to amp up the intensity of the light. So let's just put 2000 in there. And then let's create a directional light right here. Scale them up so we can see. And I think that is about the right angle for our light. So I think we're approaching the archway this way, and so our moonlight is going to be coming down there. And then let's make this 100% blue. And then it does not have a decay rate on the directional light because it is a directional light. So we just leave the intensity at 1. So what we do at this point is that we will go ahead and select our model and our 2 lights that we're going to be using, and go up here to rendering. Under lighting and shading menu, go under batch bake, and then select the box over here, which will bring up the dialog box for us. And within here, let's go here and see. By default, we want to turn this checkbox on, which will give us access to more options, such as the texture resolution. So let's set this at 2048 by 2048, so that we have enough resolution. And we're gonna bake shadows into it. Oh, one thing I need to do, which I have forgotten to do, Let's minimize this. We're going to need to turn the shadow casting on these lights. So if you go over to shadow, go down to ray trace shadows, just turn that on. Pretty simple. So go over to this guy. We want him to cast shadows too. Right? This is what distinguishes this method from the nuke method, is that we are going to be getting shadows out of our lights here, which we would not be getting out of nuke. So if we select this and then bring up our dialog box again of our mental ray baking options, and if we go here to convert, it's going to take a little time to think. All right, so it is now baked our lights into the texture of our model. So, which is nice. So that's our model. So this is our day, our moonlight. It's raking across this way, and then our center light, we're going to put some kind of firelight in there. And if we now take a look at the UVs, the UV texture editor, you can see that it's gone through and it's lit all, it's baked in the lighting to our UVs. So now what we need to do, and we're going to be using this as a mask, so now what we need to do is go into our hypershade, and if we select our object and select this little guy over here to map our current selection texture and shader. So if we double click on this, we will be able to get the name and the path of where it has baked this texture to. So let's go ahead and copy that. Minimize this, and we'll also need to export this model because we want to keep the UVs of this model. So I'm going to export this, and we'll open up this model within Nuke and see what it looks like. So within Nuke now, I have imported my UV texture that was baked within Maya, and I have my object. So if I go ahead and connect those, and let's take a look at our model. So it comes across exactly as we would want it here. And now, instead of lighting it in Nuke, we're going to use the RGB lights in here to drive the masks. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this. Take a look at our render. So that is our blue light. So if we look at RGB, so green light, blue light, so we will use those as masks. So let's go ahead and connect these back into here. So now, again, these shuffles are now copying. Let's take a look. Put that as green. So in this shuffle, if we look at that, it is the green channel is now the alpha. And in this shuffle, the blue channel is in the alpha. And now that is driving our lights here. Our color corrections, rather, our grades. Yeah, so now what we have is we have shadows, and it looks a lot better in here. And so what we're going to do now, just for fun, is I'm going to put a light source in here, just on a card. So I have right over here an element that is a little fire element here, right? So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to put it on a card, and And I'm going to move it to the center spot right here. So let's go card. And what I'm going to want to do here, especially with this card right here, I'm going to want this card to always be facing the camera. So when our camera like kind of weaves through the gravestones and looks up at this Gothic archway, I always want this light to be looking at camera. And it's a lot more likely that this will look convincing if you get a sense for that this this light, this fire, is on a card. As you move by it, it'll give the gag away, basically. So we're going to want this card to always look at camera. And the way that we do that is if we go transform geo. When you create a transform geo node, it has this little look noodle here. So go ahead and connect that to your shot camera. So now this card is always going to look at camera. So if we scale this up, and we move this card around, you can see, let me show you better over here. You can see that it's always facing the camera, and as the camera moves, it will follow. So now that that is set up, let's go ahead and place it in the center of our It's not that big. So let's move it right to the center of this, right there. Okay. And then we're going to want to create a totally different scanline render because all of this is getting color corrected, and if we included this firelight in here, then it would be affected by these color corrections. And because this firelight has its own RGB values, we don't want to include it in this render projection because we're using this as the masks. So really we need our own projection setup for this firelight, and it needs to come at the end. So if we go ahead and press M for a merge node, let's make sure it's layered right. So right now it's saying that the background is on top of the fire. We want to switch that. Easy hotkey is Shift X. It'll swap those around. So now if we take a look at that, so there's our little firelight that's going in the middle there. So now it's starting to, you can see the possibilities of using this method. If we needed to change the lighting direction, then all we need to do is pop into Maya, change the lighting, and then go through the rebake process again. It will replace that file for you, and then in here you just go reload, and it updates your lighting passes for you. And as nice as it is to be able to light within Nuke, using this process is more efficient for you to use because all of the lighting information is baked into the texture, and therefore you're not having to calculate for the light on every frame like you would be doing in Nuke. Nuke is doing that lighting, shadow casting once that gets going, and is a feature in Nuke. It will be calculating all of that information for every single frame. For this, it's just a texture. And so the calculation time is a lot less, and it's a lot more efficient. So that's something to consider even when Nuke gets its shadow casting ability for all of its lights. Then you still might want to use this method because computationally it's a lot lighter. So but now that our firelight is going to be animated and flickering, as you can see here, if we take a look at this, it is actually animated and moving. So if we want that, if we want this light to look very dynamic, then this light is going to have to be animated, this light within here. So let's go to a closer frame. So if this light is going, we're going to expect flickering to be going on within this this area. So right now it's going to be constant because nothing is animated. So the way to do that, to get a really nice animated flickering light, you can use a tool called the curve tool. So if we just copy paste this light and take a look at that, press tab and go to curve. So curve tool. So this tool will actually create a curve for you, and it will measure the intensity of this light flickering, and then you can take that that information and apply it to your grade node, which is doing the lighting for you. So if we go to this, and if you're under this tab right here, curve tool, it will give you the option of this this box right here. So this within this box, it's taking the very lows and the very highs of this flickering light, and it's going to measure those. But if you have too much black in there, then you're not going to get very much flickering of the light. So let's go in and just crop into this area here where most of it is light, and we'll get some dark in there. So this is the area that it's going to be sampling to get the flickering light. So once you've done that, all you need to do is click go. It's going to ask you the frame range that you want to use, and so our shot is 100 frames. So let's go ahead and click that. It's going to go through and it's going to do a really fast calculation of measuring the sample and its intensity. Okay, now if you go over to the intensity tab, it has recorded for you all this information. So if you go through here, you can see that the RGB and alpha are changing, and it's measuring the flickering of the light. So, and what's great about this is that when this light is low, like at this point, the light of our grade on the walls of our architectural structure are also dim. So, and then when it gets large, like at this point, then our grade will be bright. So the light intensity of this element will match the grade light that we're applying to our architectural element. So when this gets bright, the grade will get bright. When this gets dim, the grade will get dim. And there's a great continuity to that and a very realistic feeling. So what we're going to do now is you can go ahead and detach that. It's recorded all of this information for you, and move it over here to our grade node. So if we double click on our grade node here, and we've multiplied this into a certain color range. What we're going to want to do now, let's go to a closer frame. So we're going to want to copy these values into our grade multiply values. And the way that we do that is if you press Control, click on this curve, drag it down to this curve, and now what's happened is these values are now showing up in these multiply values. But what's happening is that these are really dark now. You can see the values that we had before were quite bright, and these values are quite dark. I think the red was at like a 30 or something, and now it's at a 0.5. So it's a lot more dark. So what we can do here is go in here to Edit Expression. This is the expression that's being used. It's saying that this number should be the parent of the curve tool right here. So this is saying go out of this node and look into another node. That's what parent does. And it says curve tool, that's the name of the curve tool, and then intensity data. And so it will, and this is the name of that. So this little piece of code is telling it that when we automatically dragged it into this curve, it created this, but this is telling it to look here for that information. So what we can do is we can take this value and times it by, let's say, 40. So now our value is 20 instead of 0.5. So if we click OK, you can see that the intensity of the light is increasing. So let's go to here, and then let's times this by 30. And then we'll just get a little bit of blue in there. And then we'll times this by 10. Okay. So now what we have here is we have this light, this multiply here, which is our light source, is now being driven by this intensity data that was created from our flickering light source. So if we go down here and take a look at this, now when we render this thing out, we're going to see this light here flashing and the light out here interacting with that light. So for render purposes, what we're going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this camera, and I'm going to kill the animation on this camera. So there's no more animation, so it is now a static camera. I am going to have all of these work through a static camera now instead of an animated camera. And that way the calculations, we can see the flickering a lot better if the camera's not moving, so we can evaluate if the look is working or not. But then it helps with render time for this evaluation because it's not having to calculate the repositioning of our geo. It's only calculating the animation of these lights. So if we go back to the beginning here, our camera is not moving. So let's go ahead and cache that. All right, so now it's playing back. And so you can see that we have a light source here, and it's making it flicker on our light inside our Gothic arch. And it's quite a nice look. So I would like to just see what it would look like if our card was a little bigger. So yeah, that's our card is a little bigger there. And then let's just translate it up in space on Y. Right there. And let's go ahead and play that. And we can actually go through here and decide that we want our moonlight to be a little less saturated for us. And here we are basically lighting our Gothic structure on the fly. So even if we wanted green light there, we could do that. This is more of our blue light. Say I don't want it so purple, but I kind of want it this nice blue color. And then let's go to our light in here, and I think the intensity, say, of our green is a little too high. So let's take this to 25. So now it's a little more red in there. So yeah, so there we go. So like I said before, now that we have this element that we've created in Mari, and it lives as a projected projection, we're using masks to light the inside of our Gothic archway and have interactive lighting on the environment. And so, so this is moving us definitely into the realm of environment map painting, where everything in the scene is a map painting and is pushing all these different map painting techniques to come into one shot of our environment. So for all those who have a tiny screen, I'll go ahead and make this full frame so that you guys can see the effect if you're looking on a small screen. And we'll go ahead and play that guy and let it cache. Once it's cached, I will let it play through for. All right, so there it is. It's all cached out and ready for you to view. So I think this is going to be a real fantastic look for our map painted environment, especially when we're looking through a moving camera, and to see this interactive lighting, I think is going to be great. So let's go on and move to the next part of our map painted environment shot.